Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. And we're here today with special guest, Barbara Wolf Terao, who's here to share with us her new memoir, Reconfigured. So how would your life change if you're given a life-altering diagnosis? While everyone's path is different at this time, Barbara's here to share with us how she moved forward. So Barbara Wolf Terao has been a teacher, psychologist, land ethic leader, television host, newspaper columnist, and book reviewer. Her most joyful roles are as mother and grandmother. Barbara's articles and essays have appeared in Orion Magazine, the Seattle Times, I Had Cancer website, Art in the Time of Unbearable Crisis anthology, and other publications. So let's welcome to the show, Barbara Wolf Terao.
Thank you so much, Marianne. Good to be here.
What an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. Your book is so moving. Did you feel like this was just really difficult for you to write?
It was difficult to consider leaving everything in that I wrote. I mean, when I was writing, it was just, as some people say, writing is just about simple. It's just about tearing open your chest and letting your guts and your heart out, right? But so that's kind of the first draft kind of feeling. But then how much do you leave in? How much do is it too vulnerable? Is it too raw? And I left quite a bit of the difficult information in about going through marital and medical problems and just human growth and issues, because I feel when someone is telling me the truth through their writing or in person or however, or through their art, even, a painting, you can just tell that this is something true and real from somewhere in their life and deep in their life sometimes. And that is when I get the most value out of whatever it is I'm taking in. So I decided to put the truth out there. And I thought, the funny thing is, Marianne, I thought, I wonder how I'll feel when, like, my high school classmates are reading this by people I knew back in Minnesota. It's kind of embarrassing. These are things I hid. I wouldn't have talked about openly when I was in high school because you're all about the image, right? So I thought, oh, it's going to keep me awake at night. But you know what? It hasn't. It just hasn't. I feel like I shared what I needed to share, and it will connect with people who need that information or that inspiration.
And that deep connection. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I can understand. Well, why don't you share a little bit with us? What was the inspiration for writing this book?
Oh, yeah. I've been a writer, for decades, and I'm a psychologist too. But my main, thing I like to do is write articles and essays, most, nonfiction things. And thought, oh, someday I'll write a book. And then, the practical inspiration for writing the book was that we had isolation of COVID. And I sat down one day at my desk here, where I live on Whidbey Island, and there was no social life to look forward to in the next month. So I was like, I had no distractions because I'm a very air sign Gemini, I easily distracted. But I sat down at my desk and I said, well, not only am I a writer, but I said to myself, I'm a working writer. And something shifted in me. Not only did I have the time and space and quiet to write, I do live with my husband, but he's very into playing his music. So we each were doing kind of our own thing. And it shifted because it wasn't just an aspiration anymore. Like, someday I'll write a book. It was like, oh, now. And you know what? I worked every day. I'd say almost every day for about a year, because every day I'd sit down and go, I'm a working writer. It's not like I sat down at the same time. I'm not that organized, but I got work done pretty much every day on this book. And then, was ready to get some help with editing it and get some other eyes on it. And also I had another good thing. I don't know if any of your listeners are in like workshops or things like that, other writers that might be listening. But I had a writing group back in Evanston, Illinois, and then I moved to the Washington State. So I really missed them, and everything went on online. I got to meet with my favorite white writing group by Zoom, and so that kind of helped me get going. I knew I had to bring a chapter or something in to share with them through Zoom, and that kept me going for a good year. And then I'm a pantser. We talk at writers' conferences. We joke, are you a structured outliner person, or are you a pantser? You just write by the seat of your pants. And I just write to empty my brain, find out what the heck I'm thinking. And so then, it took me a while to get everything organized and find out, what am I saying here? And then that's when the book really took shape, and I could present it to a developmental editor and then send it to a publisher.
Well, you start off your book talking about cancer and the number 13 and this correlation that you're seeing as you go back. You kind of a
Mm.
hindsight kind of look. And why don't you share a little bit about that for our listeners?
Yeah, I think I'm writing about cancer and other issues. And I would say something to keep in mind when reading this book is it sounds serious, and it does have some serious things, but it also has a lot of humor. And I just thought I'd start the book off with that day that I was waiting for my diagnosis. And I'd been, as many women do, I'd had a mammogram, and there had been some suspicious looked like tumors in my right breast. And so and that mammogram was done back in Illinois, where I had moved from. So here I am. I'd just been on Whidbey Island for a few months, and I'm waiting that's when I found out I had cancer. I moved here by myself without my husband to live in a little cottage by the sea and find out, who the hell am I? Who is Barbara? And first thing I find out is I have cancer. So the funny thing was, the day I of course got my biopsy here in Washington State, in Seattle, but I decided, while I was waiting for the results, which is sort of a anxious time, I thought, well, I'll take a nice little walk on Whidbey Island. It's a beautiful place in the Salish Sea, and there's a lovely town called Coopville, just north of where I live. And so I thought, I'll go walk around there and take my mind off things. Well, as soon as I got out of the car and walked around this cute little seaside village, there were two black cats that went in front of me. And I'm like, well, I don't like these kind of odds. And it made me start thinking too about how the number 13 kept coming up. Like when I built my house, my little cottage here on the island, it was on lot number 13. And then what was the other 13s too? Oh, I actually had my biopsy on Friday, the 13th of December, 2016. So that was another 13. And then I'm walking around a little further in Coopville, and I'm like, oh, there's cool cars here today. They had some kind of car show where people paint their cars or decorate them in weird ways, or vintage cars. And I walk right up to a white hearse in pink letters on the side. It has my name, being Barbara. A lot of my friends call me Barbie. And there on the side of the hearse was Barbie Dream Hearse. And this woman named Kat, who, she had made a limo service out of this old hearse, and she made it on the theme of Barbie, and inside was pink and everything. She showed me it, and I'm like, well, my ride is here. So, and that was the funny thing is too, just a little side note, is my book came out the same week as the Barbie movie. Because when I included it in the book, I was thinking, does anybody even know who Barbie is anymore? Is she like, do kids play with them anymore? I don't even know. My daughters used to, but it's probably kind of an old reference. Should I explain more who Barbie is? Well, by the time my book came out, everybody had Barbie on their mind. So I think a lot of people got the reference. And it was just that there was the constant, like, you have to have a sense of humor when you're going through something like this, or at least for me, it's very helpful to at least have something to make you laugh. And that really was ironic and a little creepy, but also it just is funny when I think about it. So I included that in the book and kicked off my book that way. And then the chapter ends with actually hearing the diagnosis that, yeah, I have to go through like surgery and chemo and all those things.
All the scary things so many of us hear that has to be taken care of. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was your support like during that time?
Marianne, I am just enthralled and amazed to say I am new to this island, and I am in a little sort of enclave of little cottages. And I just felt so supported. And these new friends just kept showing concern, bringing me food. And there's one particular thing I want to say too was helpful, but my overall feeling, I'll just say right off, is, oh, I had this feeling I needed to move to Whidbey Island, and now I know why. Even though when you live on an island and you have to take a ferry and everything, it is not that convenient. And I ended up having to go every 3 weeks for a year, solid year, to Seattle for treatments. But you know what? I wouldn't want to be anywhere else, because this is the most healing place that I could find for me. You know, everybody has their place where they feel at home. This is a place that just feels so welcoming and, just goes with my personality or something. I don't know. But then the other thing, I'd already been visiting a place in Langley on Whidbey Island that was called Healing Circles Langley. The healing circles, meaning if you've ever done a talking stick, you just means that the basic structure of it is you pass around an object, a stick or a stone or something, and each person has a chance to speak. And I'd gone to some of their circles before, like a women's circle, but the whole healing circles idea came about because to help people who are going through cancer or grief or very heavy things like that. And so, shortly after I moved here and finding out I have cancer, I started going to their cancer circle twice a month. And for me, I'm a person who, this is one reason I write. I don't know what I'm thinking until I get it out, like on paper or speak it. And so to be able to say what I'm going through in a circle where we have some quiet time at the beginning and the end of the circle, and we don't try to tell people, you should go see Dr. So-and-so, or you should eat more beets or, broccoli or something. No, we just feel heard. We witness each other. It was so powerful, Marianne. It sounds so simple, right? But I'm glad I found that place, because even now I still go there sometimes, now that we're meeting in person again. And it did go, I'll just tell your listeners too, during COVID, it went online to be Healing Circles Global and is in more than 100 countries. No, not 100. Anyway, like 20 countries now have Healing Circles Global. Well, anyone can join on Zoom, but the people who are on the Zoom come from a number of different countries and different languages that can be, they can find a circle that would suit them. So it's something if that appeals to people, and maybe it's not something everybody would want, but to me, it was the best way for me to just process what I was going through. And there are people there who's like, yep, I remember that, losing my hair, or yep, I remember that. They didn't have to say it. They just, I could see, they knew what I was talking about, and you didn't have to bum anybody else out. Like, it's kind of depressing to tell people all the details of what you're going through, but if you have a place to do it, it's really helpful. And whether you find a support group or something, I find that to be very, very important for just managing your emotions and what you're going through, and then to help you heal too, and to feel that you are going to get through this and you are supported by other people and whatever other resources you have. People at the end of the circles, we'd share resources, like as far as if we do have suggestions of a particular doctor or treatment or something, there's a place to discuss that. But it's mostly, the power of it was mostly just being able to speak and be heard. And that's something as a kid I didn't ever feel I quite had enough of, I guess. Some people might not feel that way, but for me, it was a big part of my healing.
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Barbara Wolf Terao in regards to her new memoir, Reconfigured. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Hi, I'm Julie Jansis, the angel medium. Want to know how to hear your angels clearly? Listen to the Angels and Awakening podcast every week. And if you want to go even deeper, register for my free 3-day Angel Fest online retreat to know exactly which angels are working with you. Register today at theangelmedium.com/free. That's theangelmedium.com/free.
Hey, pay attention, everybody. Amy Vaughn and myself, Dutch Mendenhall, are hosting an event. Have you ever felt like the wealthiest in America play by a different rule book? Even if you earn well, make money, invest wisely, educate yourself, there is an invisible barrier. It separates you from the financial security enjoyed by America's elite. The economic landscape changes every day. The wealthy elite know how to stay ahead of it because we play by a different rule book. At Invest Well Summit, we'll share all the plays, and we're making it to win. Spots are going to sell out fast at InvestWell Summit, so get your butt to investwellsummit.com and secure your seat now.
Lindsay Roy's new book, The Gift of Perspective, is a must-read. Lindsay's unique life stories of surviving and thriving after 2 major life challenges is a wonderful companion to start your new year. It's a great guidebook for anyone facing a challenge, big or small, in business or in life. Lindsay's own stories and the anecdotes of those she met along the way help illuminate real ideas in real circumstances, drawing out reflections and actionable takeaways for all. Full of faith, grit, and humor, this book has the power to change how you see things. The Gift of Perspective is available at Amazon, or visit Lindsay's website at lindsayroy.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, when you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with special guest Barbara Wolf Terao, who's sharing with us her new memoir, Reconfigured. So Barbara, we know that there's so much that's happening during the time we get a life-altering diagnosis. What was your support like during that time?
Marianne, I am just enthralled and amazed to say I am new to this island, and I am in a little sort of enclave of little cottages. And I just felt so supported. And these new friends just kept showing concern, bringing me food. And there's one particular thing I want to say too was helpful, but my overall feeling, I'll just say right off, is, oh, I had this feeling I needed to move to Whidbey Island, and now I know why. Even though when you live on an island and you have to take a ferry and everything, it is not that convenient. And I ended up having to go every 3 weeks for a year, solid year, to Seattle for treatments. But you know what? I wouldn't want to be anywhere else, because this is the most healing place that I could find for me. You know, everybody has their place where they feel at home. This is a place that just feels so welcoming and, just goes with my personality or something. I don't know. But then the other thing, I'd already been visiting a place in Langley on Whidbey Island that was called Healing Circles Langley. The healing circles, meaning if you've ever done a talking stick, you just means that the basic structure of it is you pass around an object, a stick or a stone or something, and each person has a chance to speak. And I'd gone to some of their circles before, like a women's circle, but the whole healing circles idea came about because to help people who are going through cancer or grief or very heavy things like that. And so, shortly after I moved here and finding out I have cancer, I started going to their cancer circle twice a month. And for me, I'm a person who, this is one reason I write. I don't know what I'm thinking until I get it out, like on paper or speak it. And so to be able to say what I'm going through in a circle where we have some quiet time at the beginning and the end of the circle, and we don't try to tell people, you should go see Dr. So-and-so, or you should eat more beets or, broccoli or something. No, we just feel heard. We witness each other. It was so powerful, Marianne. It sounds so simple, right? But I'm glad I found that place, because even now I still go there sometimes, now that we're meeting in person again. And it did go, I'll just tell your listeners too, during COVID, it went online to be Healing Circles Global, and is in 20 countries now have Healing Circles Global. Well, anyone can join on Zoom, but the people who are on the Zoom come from a number of different countries and different languages that can be, they can find a circle that would suit them. So it's something if that appeals to people, and maybe it's not something everybody would want, but to me, it was the best way for me to just process what I was going through. And there are people there who's like, yep, I remember that, losing my hair, or yep, I remember that. They didn't have to say it. They just, I could see, they knew what I was talking about, and you didn't have to bum anybody else out. Like, it's kind of depressing to tell people all the details of what you're going through, but if you have a place to do it, it's really helpful. And whether you find a support group or something, I find that to be very, very important for just managing your emotions and what you're going through, and then to help you heal too, and to feel that you are going to get through this, and you are supported by other people and whatever other resources you have. People at the end of the circles, we'd share resources, like as far as if we do have suggestions of a particular doctor or treatment or something, there's a place to discuss that. But it's mostly, the power of it was mostly just being able to speak and be heard. And that's something as a kid I didn't ever feel I quite had enough of, I guess. Some people might not feel that way, but for me, it was a big part of my healing.
How was it because your husband lived in a different location at that time, right? He was going back and forth.
That was what I thought. One of the reasons it made me want to write the book. I thought, this is so weird to say, oh, at this moment, I need space. My husband needed some space. felt like we both felt like 2,000 miles was about right. He was back in Illinois and I moved to the West Coast. So, yeah, I feel mixed feelings about even talking about it, but it's in the book that we weren't seeing eye to eye, I guess you'd say, for a few years there. And when I visit, my daughter had moved to this island, Whidbey Island, and when we visited her here, I thought, oh, I think if I ever move, I'd like to live here. So when things just weren't going well for us, I moved by myself to the island. And I did have our younger daughter nearby. So then it was interesting because I've read, in fact, and if you go online to cancer sites, you see a lot of examples of relationships falling apart during a crisis. And going through cancer is very hard on people, and it's hard on the person, it's hard on their partners, it's hard on their families, it's hard on their friends even, But relationships don't last. Sadly, just when you need that support of a spouse, sometimes there's a breakup. And I've read about that being a pretty higher percentage than you would think. But for my husband and I, we both kept going through some growth and changes. And I thought I'd just handle all these cancer treatments. My mom raised me to eat with good nutrition. I know how to handle this, and that's going to be enough. And I'm starting to get to know myself and listen to myself. And I have a Buddhist practice every day that kind of helps me center and activate my Buddha nature, as we might say. And I thought, I'll be fine. I'll just want to have the quiet of my little house. I'll be fine to recover from chemo. Well, after the very first chemo treatment, it was clear to me that it was going to be way harder than I thought. And this was just the first treatment. Sometimes it gets worse over time. I just didn't feel well. I didn't have enough energy to do really anything, make a sandwich or anything, That's when I called my husband. I told him not to come before that, but then I called my husband when he was back in Illinois and said, guess what? This is really hard. It's harder than I thought. And he responded. Anyway, he said, oh, okay, I'll be there for your next treatment. I'll be there. And to have him step up was the beginning of healing our relationship, as I had to deal with healing from surgeries and treatments and cancer. So that was when we started to really revolutionize our lives. Each of us had to grow and change. And I could have just given up on him. In fact, it's weird to look back on and think, gosh, we put up with each other a long time when we were really unhappy. And yet now I'm so glad we stuck it out and we just said, okay, each of us just decided to face our own karma and do what we need to do to change our lives. And we got a little better at talking. I wouldn't say we're like great communicators. We're still very mixed marriage. He's Japanese American. I'm European American. I'm an extrovert. He's an introvert. We have so many differences, and yet we've gotten a little better at communicating. But the main thing is somehow we found a way to really appreciate each other more and give each other space. And now we live together and we don't need that 2,000 miles of space. But he has his music studio and I have my writing area. And we're very happy to have our entire family, both our daughters and their husbands and a grandchild on the island now. So this is kind of like nothing against divorce. It was definitely an option for us. And, but somehow we worked through it. And I just quote a little bit of the gifts of cancer here. And it's just, I love this from Emily Dickinson when she was ill for a while. The poet Emily Dickinson, her first line of a poem is, My first well day since many ill. My loss by sickness, was it loss? Or that ethereal gain one earns by measuring the grave, then measuring the sun? Or to put it another way, I love how there's a doctor who works with cancer patients, Dr. Rachel Naomi Remen, said, sometimes it takes a wake-up call like cancer to bring us back to ourselves. The crisis of illness may shake us free of the life that we have created and allow us to begin a return to the life that is our own. And that's how I feel now. I know who I am more. I'm my own person. And my husband and I have found a way to make it work.
I think that's very encouraging for a lot of people because it is so difficult, if it's cancer or trauma of one sort or another, it's very difficult to be in a relationship and move through that. So I think it's very encouraging for people to hear how you did that.
Yeah, and another way that a concept that helped me, like I say, it helped that both my husband and I, we met at a Buddhist event and we practice Buddhism together every day when we're together. And I think it helps to have a shared spiritual practice. But there's other aspects of the Japanese culture, even though was born and raised in the United States and has been totally Americanized. There's some aspects of that Japanese culture that have helped me. And one is this concept of wabi-sabi, which is, and I considered calling my memoir that my wabi-sabi life, because that's how I felt. It means that which is impermanent, imperfect, maybe damaged or asymmetrical. And when I was, after going through cancer treatments, I was all three. I was like, definitely facing impermanence, like, am I going to die from this? My mortality, in other words. And I was definitely, imperfect and asymmetrical after my surgery. And that's one reason I end up calling the book Reconfigured. But there's the idea of wabi-sabi is that there's beauty in the broken places. And wabi-sabi then leads to kintsugi, another Japanese expression of which has to do with clay pottery. And you've probably seen examples of a teacup that's been broken, a Japanese teacup, and it's been repaired with a seam of gold. And it's actually more beautiful, right? So this is how I view it. And I hope, others can think about that when they're looking at a piece of art or an old rusty truck. There's beauty in that, those old imperfect things, or, those things that may not be standard beauty. And that goes for our lives too. We're kind of lopsided sometimes. We're not always our best selves, or we're not always, the ideal situation, but we can appreciate the beauty of our lives no matter what.
In your book, you talk about how you joined a circle where it was kind of it sounds like in many ways like a book club that you were discussing different books. And some of the topics were around dying by spiritual teachers like Ram Dass or Stephen Levine. And so how was it, being in this group of people and contemplating what death would be like? Did that make the journey easier?
Not a very popular topic, at least I think most Americans, at least the culture I grew up with in the Midwest, it's not like something people embrace or talk about a lot, death. But I think because I practiced Buddhism, I didn't write about this in the book, but I remember specifically I was in my college, like dorm room kind of thing one time doing my Buddhist prayers. I just started to realize, my parents are going to die someday. I don't know what it is, but Buddhism accepts this whole cycle. They don't call it life and death. They call it birth and death. Is this cycle that continues on, whether you believe in reincarnation or what you want to call it. But there's this acceptance, again, like in wabi-sabi, there's an acceptance of impermanence and mortality. So, yeah. And then I remembered when I was going through one reason I wrote this book, my memoir, Reconfigured, is that when I was going through cancer, I just had this morbid interest in reading books about death and dying and cancer. And of course, more like textbooks about cancer and health and stuff too. But and so I actually did join a book group where, the circle, it was again at the same place, Healing Circles, where I did the cancer support group thing. And we would read from Stephen Levine about A Year to Live, or from Ram Dass about how we're all walking each other home. We're all getting to that point, and to be in denial about it, is, I think, a mistake, or at least would be for me. I want to go into it with open eyes. I want that information. Some people might not. And that comes up too, in a way, when you're asked if you want to do a genetic test. Do you want to know you have risk factors or not? Do you want to know your chances of dying from a particular illness? So these are the kind of things that maybe some people wouldn't choose to do or look into. But I felt very at home in talking about these questions of what kind of life do we want to live, and what kind of death do we want to have, and what do we think happens then? And these are pretty fascinating questions to some of us, and I'm one of them.
What has been a practice that you've held that has really kind of kept you through everything that you've been going through, something that's kind of kept you going?
Besides relying on friends and family and being able to find some friends or the Healing Circles people where I can talk to people. I also I think having a spiritual practice, whatever it might be for you, is helpful. And when I say Buddhist practice, my practice is a Nichiren or Mahayana Buddhist type of practice, where it's not so much about quieting the mind or emptying the mind. It's we do a basic chant, and we study the Lotus Sutra, which is from a couple thousand years ago and has been translated into lots of different languages. But we chant it in like a Sanskrit kind of language every morning, my husband and I, because the Lotus Sutra is a very encouraging, proactive kind of message of we all have Buddha nature. We all have this potential. We can all break through our karma and our habits or our troubles, and we can create value. And that is, we do that by being ourselves. And so we do this chant every morning and evening. And the title of the Lotus Sutra is Myoho Renge Kyo. And we add Nam to the beginning as to say devotion to the Lotus Sutra. We're practicing the Lotus Sutra as a reminder that we're all potentially can be enlightened. We can all be happy and healthy and, improve whatever situation we're in. And so we chant that Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, every day. And that's become just a grounding thing for me and helped me. But whatever it is, whether it's going to a church, and I do also like to go to certain churches. My ancestors were Quakers, and I enjoyed all these different, not all, but I enjoy some of these other different approaches to spirituality too. So my book is not trying to preach any particular way. So I hope people will take from it the reminder to use the skills and the powers and the tools they have at hand, whether it's spiritual or relying on friends or expertise or whatever helps them to get through, when problems arise or illness arises. Please follow your own path. And I think it can really help you.
Well, Barbara, where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about your book, Reconfigured?
Oh, thank you for asking. Yes, I'm so happy to have my book out in the world, Reconfigured, and it's available online at Amazon and Bookshop and other online places, and in libraries and in bookstores. And if it's not in your library or bookstore, please request it. And I have an author website, which is just my name, Barbara Wolf, WOLF, Terao, TERAO.com. That's my author website. If you need to find out a little more, or read some of the blurbs and reviews, and the Kirkus review that was very favorable. And it's also available in Kindle too.
Well, Barbara, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
It was truly a pleasure. Thank you, Marianne.
Well, thank you, Barbara. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new memoir, Reconfigured. Well, on that note, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.